Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Hope this is working. I'm still having some problems, so it's just that's just life in this world, right? So, my name is Marc Sabatella. Welcome, everyone, to the MuseScore Café. And this is my weekly series where I talk about some aspect of making music with MuseScore. And you know the drill. I usually have some topic that I try to focus on and show you some stuff about that. Take questions. And you know, I'm going to start doing a regular series of like maybe once a month, where it's just about taking questions, because boy, we have a lot of fun when we do that. So hopefully you are seeing me, and well, are we hearing anything yet? Is the question. That's my problem. I'm not getting audio from MuseScore. So we're hearing a pre-recorded video of my MuseScore theme song, my MuseScore Cafe theme song. So that's the way it is. So anyhow, at least hopefully that worked. So for whatever reason, I'm not getting playback on MuseScore right now, and I bet if I reboot, it'll fix itself, because didn't that happen like 2 months ago? But whatever. I rebooted just before this, and that was probably my mistake. But we don't need to hear the audio. But I'm curious. I'm not going to hear the audio, but do you? If I play this, now see, sometimes it doesn't even want to play at all. Could you just hear those three notes? Could you hear those three notes? I don't. I don't hear those, but I don't know if you guys do or not. But did you hear those three notes is the question. Those three C quarter notes, because it's just not playing for me. Yeah, I wouldn't. So for whatever reason, it's not working, and such is life. Sometimes these things happen. I'm using the same settings that I always use in here. It's just something's going on that's preventing it from working. It's my default speakers. Everything should be working. It's just not. What comes up. And I did mention last week that I am going to show you a little bit about real-time Midi input, and that's going to involve going over to my other computer, which hopefully the sound is working over there. So, so anyhow, oh crap! Look at that screen just went blank too. You know, maybe I am gonna have to. What the heck? What the heck? So I think I have my screen back, and yeah, so it's going to be one of those days. Bear with me. Um, so yeah, one of those days indeed. All right, so I'm here to talk about multiple voices. So let me show you first of all some of the different things that I mean by that. You know, what does it mean to do multiple voices? At the basic minimum, what I'm talking about is the idea that you could have two different rhythms in the same measure on the same staff. So for instance, maybe voice one, let me do what I did before. I had some quarter notes, right? Let me enter those quarter notes. C, 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 C. I'm going to go back to that measure, and now I'm going to enter some notes. And actually, let me turn on my demo mode thing so you can see my keystrokes. I'm going to switch to voice 2, and now I'm going to enter some different notes here. Maybe I'll enter half notes. I'll enter E, and not in that octave, but this octave, and then F. And then maybe there's a G and an F, and maybe I want to come back here and go back to voice 1 and enter some notes there. Eighth notes this time. So that's the basic idea of multiple voices. You have different rhythms. The top voice is going C, 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 D, E, F, G, F, E, D, C. There you go. I'm your playback. I'm my own playback. Do y'all remember that? No, Bobby McFerrin from back in the 80s. I'm my own Walkman. I'm going to be my own playback, except I can't play back multiple voices. Too complicated. E, F, G, F. That's what we would hear there. So, in fact, okay, playback. I'm going to be my own playback. Let's do it. No. That's what it would have sounded like if the playback were working. Take my word for it. That's what it would have sounded like. You would have heard the E, F, and C, 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 C at the same time. That's the idea here. So that's what multiple voices are about, and that's pretty much all that's involved in entering them. And I would say, I mean, MuseScore supports up to 4 voices on each staff, and it's seldom necessary to use more than 2. It's pretty rare that you would have a measure that needs more than 2 voices in most music. But there are, I say rare, that doesn't mean unheard of. No, it definitely happens. So I'll talk about when you would need more than 2 voices. So let me open, for instance, Reunion, right? I have a copy of it in my cafe folder. Is this a modified copy? I don't know. Whatever. It's good enough. So Reunion here uses multiple voices in that top staff. We have so there's that. How about if instead of pulling out my melodica, if I just come over to my keyboard then, and then I can play this thing, right? And I can play this, and I can be my own playback a little more effectively. So let me just check my positioning here. Can you see what's going on? Yeah, you can see what's going on. There we go. You can see me. Okay. So, oh my gosh. Okay. Right. Right. That's how that goes. So we have these. The top voice is and the bottom voice is so really the 2 voices are almost identical. They're quarter notes most of the way through. There's just a couple of places where it's split into 2 voices, right? On beat 2, I wanted the top voice to have the quarter note A and the bottom voice to go have 2 eighth notes. When you're doing that sort of thing, it is considered completely legitimate to combine those. And like you can see that these are multiple voices. If you are looking at the score, that the A, C all have stems up, and the bottom voice, G, F, E, G, F, are all stems down, right? That's 2 voices. But you're allowed to combine them. You are allowed to treat the places where the quarter notes have the same rhythm. You're allowed to combine them into a chord. And we actually have a command that will do that. Tools Implode will take 2 voices and combine them where possible. So if I select that and do that, you'll see now that that's exactly what it did. Let me zoom in a little bit on this. There we go. You can see now, let me undo my change. This is what it looked like before. The A and the G had stems in opposite direction. When I ran Tools Implode, it combined them onto a single staff. So where possible, it combined them, and where they needed to be separate voices, they were separate. So Implode will let you enter the voices separately and then decide where they can be combined. So that can be a useful technique there. I'm just checking out chat and making sure I'm not missing anything here. So good. So that's a thing that I sometimes do. I'll sometimes enter the music because logically it feels like separate voices, but then it feels like, well, I can combine them. But you don't have to do that. You can enter it that way directly, and I would definitely recommend being comfortable with that. So if I wanted to do that directly, I would go into note input mode. I would enter my first voice, which is, now this is a little awkward, but I can do it. G and A together. So G, Shift A. And my next voice, my next note, I know that is, if you compare to what was happening here, it's just A in the top voice. The FE is in voice 2, right? So I'm going to enter the top voice first. It was the 2 together, and then A, and then it was F and A together. And boy, I don't even remember my own piece, but I think it's F and C. It's G, sorry. So I can maybe select that F and go up to G and come back over here and F and C. So that is that measure. So I go back to the beginning of the measure. Now I want to enter voice 2. Well, voice 2 has nothing for the first beat. And I think as soon as I go over here, it's going to pop me out of note input mode. That's what happens. So there's nothing there on beat 1. Well, we don't have a way of representing nothing exactly. It's got to be something to let voice 2 know what's going on rhythmically. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to enter a rest. So I'm going to enter 5 for quarter, 0 for, oops, I didn't switch to voice 2. Voice 2, and then 0 for my rest, and then I'll press V to make it invisible. Now I can enter my eighth notes, F, E, and this next rest here, that half rest I don't need either, so I'll make it invisible. So that is how I would enter that passage directly. I enter voice 1 first, then I enter voice 2, and if there's places where it's okay to combine the notes, then I can make the voice 2 rests invisible. That's a way you would enter this kind of music. And that kind of thing is very, very common in piano music, where you'd have basically chords for several beats, splitting into multiple voices just here and there. So Explode and Implode have an interesting relationship. Explode does basically one thing and one thing only. It takes chords like these things that are combined onto a single staff. It takes chords and explodes them onto multiple staves. So let me go ahead and add another staff. Oops, I'm going to add another staff. If I run this, if I select this measure and run Explode, what you'll see is, because there are multiple voices, it does something different. You know, to be honest, I had forgotten that that was even a thing. It's mostly, though, let me enter just some chords. F, A, G, B, flat, because I know that's what I'm singing, A, C, and I'll make that a half note. Okay, so if I select this measure and say Explode, you see it took the top notes and left them on the top staff, took the bottom notes and put them on the bottom staff. They were chords though, right? I'm going to undo that for a second. These were chords. It was all voice 1. Explode does that in one step. It just takes that chord and explodes it. Implode actually has 2 different phases that it can do. The first phase will recombine those staves, but using multiple voices, which sometimes is exactly what you want. Yeah, sometimes that's exactly what you want. You might have music on 2 staves, you want to combine them onto one, but you want them as multiple voices. However, once you have a single staff with multiple voices selected, you can then run Implode again. And now it does the other thing of kind of combining the voices. That wasn't part of the original functionality of Implode. I wrote those commands like 5 years ago, and I think I just did the dumb thing of well, not dumb, but expanding, explodes, expands into staves, Implode combines back into chords. It was an exact opposite. But then a lot of people were saying, you know what, it'd be really useful to be able to do this thing with voices. And so someone re-implemented the Implode command to give it this extra facility. So now you can either combine into multiple voices or combine those multiple voices into a single voice. I got to grab my coffee. Give me one moment. Okay. Coffee and water. Very necessary for a cafe. Okay, so where did I click to enter voice 2? So voice 2, the button is right here. You see these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 on the toolbar. So when I'm doing that, it's right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the shortcut is whatever I did, Shift, Alt, and the number. So that's the thing to know. So good. So the Implode can be useful in this multiple voice situation. Right now I'm showing you just two voices because that's what I said most music needs. And if we look at Reunion, if I play through that whole thing, and unfortunately, you know, MuseScore's playback ain't working for me right now, but it's I should know this piece better. I have to keep looking. And actually, my neck's not. It's sore this morning. It's one of those things you wake up funny. So for me to turn around and look at it, a little bit awkward. I could bring it up on my other computer here, my Windows computer, which is right in front of me. That would be smarter, right? And actually, I even have the sheet music for this. And it's even its own fancy little display stand because I'm that kind of guy. So everything here is only two voices. Even here, it looks a little complicated right there, but it's really just two voices on each staff. Boo da dum on the top voice and invisible rest, ba dum in the bottom voice. On the bottom staff, I have two voices. One voice is going. Let me find it. So these are the stem up notes, right? That's one voice. The other voice is going invisible rest, with a half note. So two voices on each staff. And really most of the piece is that way until you get a couple measures further in when we have this passage. I'm taking that in slow motion so you can check out what's happening. Top voice is just A flat G, right? That's what's happening here. A flat G, that's the top voice. Then voice 2 is going. It has that rhythm. So it has rest, quarter, quarter, half, quarter. But there's a third voice in there because there's another note that's sustaining differently. Rest, so it's half, dotted half. So there's three independent rhythms going on there. And it doesn't really feel that complicated. It's really just about me holding one note, me holding this note while these notes move. So that's not much of a rhythm, right? Dotted half note tied over, that's barely a rhythm, right? That's just a long note, but it's a rhythm as far as notation goes. I got to hold that note out, so I need another voice to write this. And then this B actually gets to be part of that whole passage. It got to be part of both of those chords, so it's a half note, whereas the other two were quarter notes here, so I needed a third voice for that. And I think that's the only place in this particular piece where that happens. But if you're playing some Beethoven, you're playing some Chopin, you'll find more examples of it. It's not a super uncommon thing in piano music to occasionally need three voices for something like that. I guess I'm not sure where you might see that it looks like five voices, five notes for sure. For these chords here, that's three notes in that chord, G, D, B flat, but they're all the same rhythm. They're all on the same stem. That's just one chord. And so if you've never entered chords before, maybe some people here haven't, in note input mode, you can either just sort of click the notes in and build your chord that way, or you can do how I would usually do it, A to enter the first A, then Shift C to put a C on top of it, Shift F to put an F on top of that. So those are the way you build chords. So as long as you've got three, as long as you can have as many notes as you want, all on the same stem. I only got 5 fingers right on this hand, so I'm not going to generally put more than 5 notes on a stem. But if you want to, have a ball. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? I got this big old and I can kind of play that, right? That's if I just sort of put my fist down on that. No, I'm playing like 8 notes at a time right now. So there you go. It is sometimes possible to play clusters of more than 5 notes, but only clusters. So multiple voices come up often in piano music, also in guitar music, for kind of the same reason. There'll be times when we have one note sustaining while other ones move. The other super common situation is choral music, where maybe you're writing A, C in one, and you're writing this for, that's your soprano part. Now I'll go Shift, Alt, 2, and my alto part is going to go G, and then 8th note F, E, and then quarter note G, F, and I'll go down to the staff below for the tenor voice. Now, here is a super, super common mistake that people often make writing for voices, writing for soprano, alto, tenor, bass. You think of that as, hey, there's 4 voices. I guess that's voice 1 is soprano, 2 is alto, 3 is tenor, 4 is bass. No, that's not how it works. The 4 voices are for each staff. Each staff gets up to 4 voices. We already saw like this one little example where I needed a voice 3, but voice 4 is hardly ever going to be needed. That's very rare, actually. So, but voice 1, voice 2 in choral music, you're not going to use. Voice 3, you're not going to use. You're going to use soprano is going to be 1, alto is 2 for the top staff, and then on the bottom staff, it'll be tenor is going to be voice 1. So I'll enter some tenor notes. G, whoops, not that octave, but an octave lower. I'm hitting the wrong button here. Here we go. C. C. I'm just trying to make this reasonable. And then B flat. B flat. There's my tenor part. And now I'll go back and enter my bass part in voice 2. F. F. E flat. E flat. That's a simplified version of what the piano part was. The piano part was more arpeggiated. This is more just, and yes, I know those are parallel fifths in there, and it's a thing. So, the shortcut to go one staff down, on most computers, I think the default is Alt plus down arrow. Try it. On my system, Alt plus down arrow is a reserved shortcut. It automatically converts to like page down or something. So I had to redefine that shortcut to be the left bracket. So I use the left bracket here. Left bracket, you can see that, and then right bracket. Left bracket to go, whoops, wrong one. Left bracket is going down. And it's not going down by staff necessarily. It's going within, it's going from voice to voice first, from that A down to the G, then down to the C, then down to the F. So that command is for that. There is the ability to customize a command that will go directly by staves. I don't find that useful enough to need it, but if you go to Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts, and then I'm going to type in here staff. So you will see there is next staff or voice. That's what I did. But move, no, that's not the one. There is somewhere, well, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there's not a separate command that only goes by staff without going through voices. I sort of thought there was, but unless it's spelled stave for some reason. Yeah, I guess maybe there's not one that's only the next staff or previous staff. It always is going to go through the voices first too. So there's not another command, I guess. So yeah, that's those are those shortcuts. Oh, and I didn't actually show making that 3-voice version, but let me do that. So the top voice had, I'm going to make it a whole note, an A, and then I'll go back. My second voice had a rest. Oops, not a whole rest, but a quarter rest. I'm struggling because I'm looking up at my keyboard because I kind of want to keep the view the way I have it. But so quarter rest, and then a couple quarter notes. E, D, I'm going to say it was that even though it's not. C, and then I can go back and say in voice 3, so Control Alt 3, I'm going to enter a quarter rest and then a, say, dotted half note, B. And I want it in this octave. So that's how you'd enter the third voice. I think I actually put it in voice 4, so the stem would default to down. So if you'd entered in voice 3, defaults, voice 1 defaults to up, 2 down, 3 up, 4 down. I can just press X though, and that'll flip that B down. Now, when doing that, notice it puts them on the same stem. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. That's a thing that happens, especially in guitar music, if you're writing an arpeggio where the first note is kind of long, or actually, think about that Bach prelude. The C generally gets held out. I don't know if it's written that way, but that's how people play it. Because we're trying to make it all lush and beautiful. This might be what Bach wrote. I don't remember. I could look it up. But if you wanted to write this, where the bottom note sustains, and that's a real common thing in guitar music especially, then you might actually want to show a half note stem down, and then also show the eighth notes kind of stem up. Oops, what did I do? 4, turn it into an eighth note, and then put the stem up, G, stem up, etc. So putting them on the same stem, and then actually putting this one perhaps stem up also. I hit the wrong button. I'm trying to select this and press an X. There we go. So putting them on the same stem like that in writing that kind of guitar music is actually pretty common. So yeah, you can definitely do that. But in my case, I wanted them offset. If you look at Reunion, you can see the B, you can actually see a little bit of separation there between them. That's pretty common in this sort of setting. So in order to make that happen, I came over to the inspector in the chord section. Don't use the first offset you see. If you use the first offset you see, it's literally just going to move the note head, leaving the stem and everything else alone. You don't want that. But if you move the chord X offset, now it moves the whole chord, stem, dot, and all. So I just offset it a little bit. So that is something you occasionally want to do when working with 3 voices on a same staff. If there's places where you feel it'll help to give a little separation between the voices, you do that. So another comment that I want to make is about these rests. This rest I felt was important to show, the voice 2 rest. Let me undo some of that stem business because that's bothering me now, because now it's not clear which voice is actually which. I want to undo until, okay, so this was the situation I had before I started playing around with voices, with stem direction. The E kind of needed the quarter rest so that you knew that this E came in on beat 2. So you can't always hide rests. I got away with hiding the rest in that first example because in Reunion, actually, where is that example? I guess I must have messed it up. Well, in this, let me just re-implode here. Tools, implode. So in this example, it's perfectly clear what beat this F comes on. It's beat 2 because it's the same beat as that A. And that A is beat 2 because the first note was a quarter note. However, if I hid these rests here, oops, again, I'm not hitting the V. If I hid these rests, it is now not obvious. You can kind of visually see, oh, I guess that must be probably around beat 2, but you don't want it to be about that. You don't want it to be, I guess probably it's about beat 2. You want to read each voice left to right. So in this case, we were able to tell that that was beat 2 because it aligned with everything else that's very clearly beat 2. Here, these notes aren't aligned with anything else that lets you know what's going on. So it's actually, you need to show that rest. So you wouldn't mark it invisible. On the other hand, the third rest is overkill at that point. So the third voice rest, I will very happily just mark invisible, because now that one rest is enough to tell me when both of these notes come in. And I believe in Reunion I did that as well. Yeah, I only show one rest here, even though there's actually two voices. In the bottom staff, I have another rest, of course. So those are, I don't know, those are some things about using voices in music, and I'm showing you on piano because it's a real common example, but the same things apply in other things. So I see Gene's asking about calling them fingers instead of voices. Well, the thing is, it's not about fingers, and it's because typically I'm going to use I'm going to use several fingers to play any one given voice. And as an example of that, what I'll do is I will bring up a fugue. Right? If I bring up a fugue, courses, I'll bring up some, let's see, my counterpoint course and my fugue form. All right, so here we have two voices on that top staff. The top voice is going, so da 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 da. That's the blue notes there. The bottom voice is going, so I needed several fingers to do that. In fact, it's hard to play. It's not that hard, but it's, it takes a little coordination to do that. So this isn't one finger playing all those blue notes. I'm using, if you can see, I don't know how well you can actually make it out, but I'm starting on my fourth finger, fifth, 4. I'm starting 4 and then 2. And then I got my pinky and thumb together, and then my fourth finger, and I switch over. I'm using different fingers for these lines, even though they're happening. So they're not fingers. The term voice is what's been used for centuries for this, because all music was vocal music at first, right? Before they ever invented a piano, you sang, and then they started inventing instruments. But the idea of multiple parts have always been called voices as long as that English word has existed in connection with music. That's what we've called it. So I see a question that I actually don't know how to answer effectively. Why is F sharp sharp? Why is F double sharp the same as G? Well, it's not the same any more than the word TOO is the same as the word TWO. They're both pronounced two, but they mean different things, right? TOO means the same as kind of also. TWO is a number. They just happen to sound the same. Well, F double sharp, if I take F and I go up a half step, there's F sharp. Go up another half step, there's G. Okay, it sounds just like G. If I call it F double sharp and play that button, it's the same button on the piano, sounds the same on the piano, but they have different meanings. If I'm playing a G sharp minor scale, this is the G sharp minor scale, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G. If I want to play harmonic minor, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F double sharp, G, and I have to call it F double sharp because otherwise my scale's got two G's in it. It's got a D natural and a G sharp. That's not even going to look like a scale. It's going to look funny. It's going to have a weird gap in it, right? If I try to write a G sharp minor scale that way, in eighth note, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, whoops, I keep hitting the V instead of the C, C sharp, D sharp, E, F, double sharp, and if I try to spell it this way, it's going to call it a G, but if I press J, it'll respell it for me. G sharp, that's what I want my scale to look like. I want my scale to go line space, line space, line space, line space. And so if I respelt that thing as a G, this looks funny. It doesn't look like a scale. It's going to cause people to play it wrong because you're mentally going to see this and not recognize what's supposed to be going on, that it's really a scale. Your finger is going to overshoot that note when you're sight reading. Because we read by pattern recognition. We don't really read one note at a time. We recognize patterns. Just like in reading words. We don't read the word, orchestra by looking at every single letter and then sounding the thing out. Maybe when you first encountered that word you did, and then you wondered why it wasn't orchestra. But at some point you just sort of see the big picture and you know what word it is, which is why you can read things even though there's misspellings and all. Okay, while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to talk about MIDI input very briefly because it's a thing, right? I mentioned last week that there is a real-time MIDI feature in MuseScore, but it's, a little awkward. It's, maybe doesn't work as nicely as we might want. But the reason is this: MuseScore was never designed to handle real-time input. It was never designed to be able to count how many milliseconds you held something down and have a clock that's timing everything and keeping everything synchronized. It was never designed for that. That code basically is not in there. It might be in there coming in MuseScore 4, but it isn't yet. And yet we wanted to have some form of real-time MIDI input. So Peter Jonas, who is now what's his developer community manager? I forget what his actual title is, but he is now an actual member of the core MuseScore team as far as this goes. Peter Jonas, when he was a student, implemented as part of the Google Summer of Code project, he implemented what he called at the time semi-real-time input. And it's kind of cool the way it works. The way it's going to work is I'm going to come over here to the note input, and I'm going to show you on my screen, but I'm going to do it over here on another computer, so you'll have to just trust me that it's working. I'm going to go to the real-time manual mode. The real-time manual mode, the way this works is, and here I'm going to wish you could see my screen better than you probably can. And sorry about that. You'll have to trust what's happening here. I'm going to go and do the same over here. I'm going to go to real-time manual mode. I'm going to press a C, and it's entering a C. I don't know if you can see, but it did enter a C. And then I'm going to press the pedal on my keyboard. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. Now I release the C. Now I'll play a D, and 1 beat, release. And now I'll press the E, 1, F, 1, G, 1, A. All right, if you could see what was on my screen really well, which you probably can't, but what it is, let me play it back for you. You'll now hear it's what I played. As I kept pressing the pedal to say one more beat, it extended that first C and made it a dotted half note, and then the others were quarter notes because I only pressed the pedal once. You can also set it up what's called the automatic real-time mode. I find this one really disorienting and hard to work with personally because there's a little bit of a lag between when I press the note and when I hear the sound. But what's going to happen on this mode is I press my C, and well, I'm going to press the pedal and it's going to start the metronome. And then I can start playing along to the metronome. So I'm going to press the pedal. So what is the case is, unfortunately, you actually need to, you probably heard me not being in time with the thing, and that's because, well, in part, it's because there's a little lag between when I press the key and when it shows up, and then I'm trying to circumvent that lag by playing a little ahead of time. Then I'm sometimes getting it and sometimes not. So what actually came out, you'll hear, is not really close to what I entered. I'm pretty sure that's not quite what I played, and it's because if you play a little note, if you play the note a little ahead of the metronome or a little behind it, it has to decide which beat you really meant it to be on, and it's guessing. It's just guessing. So, well, it's rounding, but the point is it doesn't have the kind of information, the kind of real-time processing information that would be needed to do a great job of it. So it does an okay job of it at best. Now, one of the things that you'll realize relevant to talking about voices is this method is only good, like if it's great entering quarter notes, one per beat, but if you want to enter eighth notes, you'll actually have to select eighth note on the toolbar and then start the metronome. Oh, I have to go into note input mode with eighth note selected. And now click beat eighth. It's clicking the beat and it's clicking the eighth notes. Now I can enter eighth notes. And again, what it actually entered is not that close to what I played. So it heard a couple notes that I actually played one at a time. It heard them as close enough to each other that it decided it was one chord. So relevant to voices, real piano music, it's never going to be able to sort out all the complexities of what you just saw me doing in Reunion, where I had, some fingers moving, some fingers not moving. It's really only good for entering one voice at a time and only fairly straightforward rhythms. And the real-time automatic mode like that, you maybe need a better MIDI connection than I have. I don't know exactly about that lag. There might be ways around it. There might be different connections that are better for that. But the manual mode works pretty well. You hold a note, you pump the pedal a few times. It's actually kind of cool. And then the same thing works there if you set the duration on the toolbar to eighth note. So if I go to an empty measure and go into note input mode, and then I start pumping the pedal, I can press an F on my keyboard, pump the pedal. If I have eighth note selected here, every time I pump the pedal, it'll enter an eighth note. Or if I have 16th note selected there, every time I pump the pedal, it enters a 16th note. So if I have 16th selected and I want to enter a quarter note, I pump the pedal 4 times. So I'm not going to claim it's the most efficient method of note input in the world, but it is pretty clever and it does work. So anyhow, that's a thing you might also want to know about. So I would say, I also see another question about accidentals there. Why is F flat a white key? I don't know. That's how they decided to color the piano. You'd have to go back a few hundred years ago and ask them why they put those keys next to each other and colored them the way they did. That's yeah, that's a deeper musicological question, but there's some really basic theory that you should really understand in order to answer that. And so that gives me an opportunity to do my little commercial. Please forgive me, I got to do my little commercial. So many of you are on my mailing list and saw something about this already, but it was 1 year ago this week, actually it was yesterday, the 30th, that I launched my basic music theory course on my website. And so that course, let me put it in the chat. I'm going to actually type where I can type reasonably. HTTPS school.masteringmusescore.com. That's my site, and I'm going to pin it. Pin. There you go. So the reason I'm pointing that out is, so it was a year ago this week that I launched this basic theory course, and it deals with all those questions, these really basic fundamental questions of why are these notes called what they are? How do you know what is that minor scale there? Why is this scale here spelt one way versus the other? What is the harmonic minor scale? Where did it come from? Those basic fundamental aspects of Western music theory. That is what the basic music theory course that I launched a year ago covers. So I launched it a year ago, but I kind of did it a little, it happened right as COVID was hitting, and it was like, you know what, I really don't want to be all commercial about this course. Let me just sort of put it out there and see what happens. But so it was I kind of feel like it's time to revisit that, and so I sent out an email to anyone who's on my list who wasn't already enrolled, letting you know you can enroll for 25% off of any of my courses. So that's my commercial. That is my commercial. My celebration of the 1-year anniversary of my theory courses is go ahead and if you visit my site, just use the coupon code anniversary. Anniversary is the coupon code. So if you use anniversary when you're enrolling, you will get this 25% discount on anything. Actually, on my course, on my site, I decided to apply it to anything. So that's my little bit of celebration and my little bit of commercial for you. All right, so I saw another question about multiple voices here, and notating inner voices for piano that cross staves. Okay, this is a good question. Let me show you my Fugue again. So in my Fugue here, this is like a really simple, and unfortunately playback's not working, so you're not going to get to hear it, and I don't have this printed out, and I won't be able to play it for you. So my master class, my master class same time, right? On Thursdays, for people who don't know, I do the same kind of thing, but talk more about the musical stuff as opposed to the MuseScore stuff. And so this is a 3-voiced fugue, and when I have just 2 voices, then it's really easy to know where to put them, top voice in the top staff, bottom voice in the bottom staff. When a 3rd voice comes in, you'll see sometimes I have it notated on the top staff here, and in fact, I think in this fugue, it's always on the top staff. I don't think I ever moved it to the bottom staff because it didn't go low enough, but realistically, I could have. I totally could have right here. The middle voice here is a B, A, B, C. So you can totally move these to the bottom staff. So if you've never seen this before, there's a shortcut for that, Control Shift down. And that just moves that note. You can select multiple notes at once and do it, but it moves those notes. They still technically live on the top staff, but they're notated as if they're on the bottom staff. That can be useful for fugues where maybe your inner voice moves from staff to staff. But already you'll notice one of the drawbacks of doing that is when doing this, we don't know how to handle these sorts of collisions. And so you're going to have to fix that manually by using the same thing that we saw before of offsetting notes that way or offsetting it the other way, maybe. Maybe that's better. Yeah, I think it is. And then I think there was a question about using a line to connect them. And yeah, if you click this note and control click that note, so they're both selected, you can go to Add Lines, Note Anchored Line. I do this enough in my educational materials that I have a shortcut I defined for it. Control Alt L. That dialog I showed you before, that shows you the shortcuts, that you can also customize them there. I started to talk about that, and then I think I never did. So that adds a line there. So that line is sometimes used to kind of show you, to kind of help the eye tell that, hey, that melodic line, that inner voice just migrated from one staff to another. When it does that, it actually anchors the line to the center of the note head, which probably isn't really what you want. So you'd want to maybe select, I'm just going to drag for now, but you can use keyboard shortcuts or whatever, and maybe put a little space between the line and the note like that. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Yeah, some stickler will tell you always have to do that, but I will tell you that I would have to imagine any pianist who's capable of playing these fugues is going to be capable of following that with or without the line. So I have mixed feelings on the necessity of those sorts of things. So yeah, those are some of the things that I want to talk about here. I guess the last thing to talk about that I knew I wanted to talk about is just drum staves, because drums use multiple voices, at least drum set does. So if I had a drum set staff, they use multiple voices in such a specific way that we have special commands just for drums to kind of make that job easier. So let me come to a nice clean spot here. And if I go to drum staff and press N for note input mode, now you see the drum palette down here, and you can see that some of the notes are stem up and some are stem down. That the stem up notes are the voice 1 notes and the stem down are voice 2. This is all set up according to what's probably the most common standard for drum set, which is cymbals and drums that you hit with your hands go stem up. The bass drum and hi-hat you hit with your feet, they go stems down. That allows you to, you only got 2 hands and you only got 2 feet. And so you shouldn't need more than 4 voices, but you can actually do everything you need with 2 if you're clever about things. Because think about like that, this. I needed 2 voices to do that with my fingers because I'm holding one note while other notes move, but drums don't hold notes. So I'm never going to need to have a half note and a quarter note at the same time and notate the half note. I can just call them both quarter notes. And so you end up with a lot more flexibility. You can just say, hey, that was a quarter note. There's no such thing as holding a drum for 2 beats. It's just not a thing. So in drum music, if I want to enter, say, a snare drum on 2 and 4, I can hit 0, and then A is the shortcut for snare, and then 0, A. Or if you prefer using the palette, you can double click that A. Or you can click it in the palette and then click in the score where you want it, and it adds it there. Lots of different ways of using the drum, and I've done a whole lesson on drums, so I'm not going to belabor that here. But then voice 2, the same story. So if I want the bass drum on 1, I can now just double click the bass drum, and I think it changes voices automatically when I double click. It does when I use the shortcut. Let's find out. Yes, it did. It entered it into voice 2 automatically. And then I can put a rest and then another bass drum. This isn't much of a drum beat, but it's just showing you the idea. It's multiple voices, but I never had to hit the voice button. The notes know which voice to go into. Now, you can certainly manipulate the voices above and beyond that, but drums, because they use multiple voices in this really specific way, that snare is always going to be in voice 1, the bass drum's always going to be in voice 2, so why not just let the note know that that's where it goes? If you don't like that particular thing, like I know in France, actually, let me come back to that. In France, it was common, or is common maybe, to, instead of using up for hands, down for feet, to use up for left hand or left side of body, down for right side, or vice versa. I never remember. So you can go to Edit, Drum Set, and this custom lets you customize lots of things about which voice, which note goes in, and stuff like that. Again, out of the scope of what I'm really talking about today. So that's a whole bunch of stuff about working with voices. Now, there's editing. Once you've entered notes in voices, then copying and pasting between voices, there's all sorts of things that can come up about editing music, using the selection filter and all sorts of other things that I feel like I don't really want to get too far into that. Maybe I'll do another one on editing. We'll just talk about editing in general in another cafe. But next week is the first week of April, and I mentioned last time I'm going to make it a tradition now that we have just Ask Me Anything the first week of the month. So we're going to see how that goes. Next week, no topic, just have some questions, and I'll answer any question on any topic. How about that? Okay, so I do see a question about a big band chart with figures above the staff. Oh yeah, so that is another use of multiple voices that is worth showing. I'll show you. We actually designed something specifically for that. Let me delete this stuff. Let's say that you wanted to have a rhythm, and I'm going to enter it with the snare drum. I wanted to have quarter, eighth, eighth. And I want this to be a rhythm that displays above the staff, and I want slashes on the staff. That's a common thing in big band drumming. You just have slashes that mean keep time, but then you put these specific rhythms above the staff. So we have a special command for this, or series of them. And they are under the Tools menu. You'll see Fill with Slashes, which fills a measure with slashes like that. And a separate command that says toggle rhythmic slash notation that takes the existing notes and turns them into a rhythm. Now, it's not above the staff yet, right? So there's a special trick to this. Rhythms that you enter in voice 1 or 2, we display on the staff. 3, we display above the staff. So what I did is I entered in voice 1, and now you get to see a little bit of editing here. Tools, voices, exchange voice 1 and 3. That moves those notes to voice 3. Then, now I can run the toggle rhythmic slash notation, and you'll see they are now appearing above the staff. And then I can run the fill with slashes, and it fills the thing with slashes. Unfortunately, a bug developed sometime in the last few months where the rest here that used to be above the staff because it's in voice 3 got moved onto the staff. There's complicated reasons for that, having to do with how we try to have rests avoid each other, and what we did backfired here. So you're gonna have to manually move that rest back up above the staff, maybe here. Yeah, that's an unfortunate regression there. But so anyhow, that's the process there. And so if it went by a little too fast for you to see, just rewind a little bit and watch this. Because yeah, I want to wrap up here. So I will see if there's any other last questions about this sort of thing here. Oh yeah, okay, I see about long notes. Yeah, so you can certainly have long notes with a roll. But consider this, it takes 2 hands to do a roll, right? So you're not going to have another hand free for another note with your hand if you're doing a roll. So you realistically don't end up having to need another voice for your hands because you've already used both hands to play that snare roll. So you're not going to play a cymbal while you're playing that snare roll. Not very often. You could do that. That's a thing. And then, yes, in those rare times, maybe you end up requiring a third voice, but it's pretty rare. So, again, the question about the scales, I'm going to say, check out my basic music theory course. It really answers all these sorts of questions. And even just the handouts for them are available on MuseScore.com. If you just search for basic music theory on MuseScore.com, you'll find my handouts. They're all free there. And look up the harmonic minor scale. But basically, we want to use every letter name once. We always want to use each letter name once for the reason exactly that I showed you earlier. We want our scales to not look like this. We don't want our scales to have this funny gap in them there. We want our scales to look like that. Line space, line space, line space. And so even though the scale itself has a weird little gap in it, we want to spell it in a way that's more clearly a scale so that people understand, people playing it, looking at the music, understand that. So that's my short answer. But again, the longer answer requires you to really get a little deeper into the theory. So I definitely recommend studying up on that, checking out my course. All right. Unfortunately, I no longer have, did I make the mistake of closing that window? Well, that's okay. I can get it back, right? I'm going to play you my my theme music going out again because I can. I can at least play that even if I can't play music from MuseScore. I just got to find that music so we can hear my lovely theme music going out again. So, there's the theme music, and that means it's time for me to wrap up. So I hope you've all enjoyed this session despite the technical difficulties. It kind of gave me a good excuse to come over to the piano and do my own playback, as I said. And I kind of want to come over here anyhow just to show a little bit about Midi Input. So next week, again, it's going to be Ask Me Anything. So you don't ask me anything about MuseScore or about music, whatever. But other things too, but I don't know that you want to hear my answers about other things. So every week on Wednesday we do this. Please check out my website. Check out all the resources that I offer there. There's free resources like this and the Music Masterclass. And then there's courses like that basic music theory course that I like, or music course that's more advanced. Check it out. Hope everyone has a great week. And see you next time. As soon as I get